Well, in Houston, I'm John Herder. It's Tuesday, the 13th day of June. Great as always to have you along, everybody. From the Experts is a virtual networking opportunity flow accelerator, helping leaders across industries connect very quickly in a brief, moderated, interactive show format. Yeah, like a TED Talk with interaction. If all goes well, your curiosity sparked, new ideas, accelerate action. You may have helped yourself, somebody else solve the problem, make a connection, reaching the opportunity faster. Connecting and learning with other leaders has never been more important for your business. Welcome to the second in a series of interactive shows focusing on helping business leaders solve problems with AI in partnership with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. On the show today, an open conversation discussing the pros and cons of on-premise, in-cloud, and hybrid implementations of AI resources. Folks, help me welcome guest expert Bill Mannel. As Chief Technologist for HPC and AI Solutions in the Americas, Bill has more than 25 years developing and selling HPC data, big data, and AI solutions for the global level at HPE and Silicon Graphics. He started his career as a uniformed officer for the United States Air Force. And following that, he worked with NASA on advanced aircraft designs. Fun fact about Bill, he's an ex-news reporter and was editor of his high school newspaper, which won a Pulitzer. Got to ask him about it. Hey, Bill, thank you very much for taking time out to share your insights and feedback with the group today on this strategic AI resources discussion, which is taking place right now in boardrooms everywhere. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John, and thank you, everyone. Happy to be here. Today this is a very important question for a lot of us. We're living in a world of big data. I've been speaking about this topic for about a decade or so, and it's not getting any smaller. So from all the clicks we have on the internet, from our cell phones, from our connected devices, my wife and I just got a couple of Honeywell thermostats, and we can actually get weather data off the things. So it's pretty fascinating from that perspective. But all this data, and I make this, so I've got half of my company does storage, I do compute, and the storage guys always say, well, the data is the most important thing. And then I always come back and say, well, if you've got a bunch of data and you don't compute on it, it's just a bunch of data. It just takes up space and costs you money, sort of thing. So you really have to compute on it to analyze it. And this is where AI can come in and really help a lot of businesses understand their data, make good decisions, build better products, interact with their customers in a different way from that standpoint. But a lot of people don't know how to get started, or maybe they're nervous about getting started. And the big question here is, do you start with your own resources? Do you go to the cloud, or do you do some combination thereof? And when I talk about AI resources here, I'm really talking about the software, the hardware. Sometimes it's the interfaces and the interconnect. Sometimes it's the applications. Sometimes it's the skilled people that you need to help you on your AI journey. These are the things that we talk about when we talk about AI resources. Where do we want them to come from that perspective? So if I can show the first slide, please, John or Gus, either one. So one thing that we're definitely seeing is AI can revolutionize some of the operating models a lot of companies have as we go forward, and we're seeing that at a lot of companies. I mean, for example, the first point here is being able to deliver a much richer experience. And my example here is, I just went on ChatGPT when this thing became famous a little while ago, and my wife and I have been wanting to see the little turtles get released on South Padre Island in Texas. And so in the past, if I did a Google search on that, I ended up with hundreds of URLs and not really knowing, and 98% of them probably wouldn't give me what I wanted. When I did the same on ChatGPT, I had this very concise description of where to go, what to do, other pointers for data, these sorts of things. So great example of how to deliver a much richer customer experience, from hundreds of URLs that I had to sort through to a nice concise description that I could actually take and do something with very quickly, and even enlarge upon it if I wanted to on my own. So that was very helpful. At the same time, a lot of companies want to accelerate their the velocity at which they make decisions. So being able to gather up enough data together to make those decisions. Maybe it's along the production line, and we want to make sure that every part is at the quality it needs to be, as opposed to finding out at the end that you're out of compliance. Now you've got a bunch of parts you're going to have to fix or throw away or whatever sort of thing. So being able to do those kinds of decisions as well is something that AI and ML could be able to do for you. And also seeing around corners, what's the future look like? How can we make decisions now that will help to impact that as we go forward? So doing, back, 20 some years ago, we used to call this computational steering. So in other words, look to where the data is guiding us, and can we guide it in a different way and get to a solution faster, or maybe a better solution as we go forward. So these are all things that AI and ML can do for us as we go forward. And we want to have it do things for us, not do things to us in business, certainly from that standpoint. So, as we start to look at these AI resources I mentioned before, we want to be cognizant about the impacts of where we find them. And those impacts can be in places like cost, and places like flexibility, and even in ownership and control from that standpoint. So these can all be, very important considerations when we look at where we want to get our AI resources. So, and a lot of times there's no one right answer. For a lot of companies, it depends where they are as a company, what they're trying to get to, how they're trying to begin their AI journey. So let's go to slide 2, John, if I could please. So, one of the things that is the reality today is that a lot of customers, as they try to move to the public cloud, they find that they've got a lot of hybrid workloads with a lot of data gravity. So the data is more or less trapped. It's hard to move it for a variety of different reasons. It could be from a compliance perspective. It could be from an ownership perspective. It could be, in some cases, it's just too expensive to do that sort of thing. And that kind of leads me into this multi-generational IT problem that all companies have. And I tell you what, as I've been wandering around recently, I hear this in spades. I talk to system administrators, and they say, hey, look, we've got compact gear that we bought 25 years ago. It's still in service, and we've been trying to get the engineers to move their apps over and retire that stuff, but I can't get it. In fact, I was at a data center recently for a very large customer, and the system administrator in charge of that pointed to this one box, which, by the way, had a 5.25 floppy drive in it, and said, I've been trying to get rid of that thing for a decade, and the engineers still haven't got rid of it. And then the problem that happens is you look at all these pieces, and you look at the ROI of trying to move that up to the public cloud. It's really hard to make the ROI calculation work. So we see a lot of sort of trapped IT, if you will, that we just can't move away from yet. And that leads to the bottom right, where almost 70% of apps and data are still on premises from that standpoint. So it's just too hard to move. And then on the lower left, you see a lot of governments, and for all very good reasons, are intersecting some of the things that we could do by putting restrictions on where data can be located, where it can be shared. So more and more in a lot of countries, data generated in the country has to stay within the country. It can't migrate out from that perspective. So these are also causing restrictions and things like that, making this job of possible cloud migration much tougher as we go forward. So these are all things, and these are changing all the time. And CIOs need to come in and make some decisions on how to play their cards right as they go forward. And so as you navigate this challenge, it's going to be indeed a challenge as you go, and it's important that you make the right decisions. Obviously, I think one example I do have is there was a operations officer for a CIO that came into our customer briefing center a few years ago and said and declared with a lot of firmness that he couldn't see a reason why this fairly large company wouldn't be able to move all of their everything to the public cloud. And to be frank, they disappeared from us for like a year or 2 years, and then recently they came back again, and they said basically they had tried to do that, It didn't work. They had exactly what we see on this chart here. They had trapped applications that they still had to support. So they didn't really save a lot because they still had to have personnel to support those apps and those systems. They had some data that was confidential that they didn't feel comfortable in moving. So that was there as well. And so they had a problem, and then they were buying systems from us again to put on premises. So this seems to be a common solution if you look at some of the data. You try to get as much to the public cloud, but you can't. So that's kind of an important result. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this is sort of your cloud operating model, or maybe your cloud lifestyle. So what does that mean to you, sort of thing? So typically in the public cloud experience, you get agility. I've been in conversations with customers before, and we're working with them trying to figure out how they upgrade their infrastructure. And meanwhile, they've had a public cloud provider say, hey, look, we'll get you started on Monday. just provide you some compute and you'll be ready on Monday, sort of thing. So definitely that idea of business agility, which is certainly attractive to some companies, to some institutes, depending upon their maturity level, these sorts of things as well. A lot of people enjoy the cloud experience. Again, ease of use, getting on quickly, not having to stand up a data center or data room or hire IT staff. That's certainly nice. My wife actually ran a small museum, and being able to just say, hey, we're just going to concentrate on the museum part of this, let someone else handle our IT. That was, for the 30 employees she had, that was great. So that happens a lot, sort of thing. And cloud economics in that case was, probably a good choice at that time in that museum's life, to say, hey, look, we're just not going to focus on that right now. Not important. There's obviously a lot of automation that's available as well to the public cloud. Lots of tools out there to allow you to move your data and move your apps and take advantage of some of those tools, and obviously almost infinite scalability if you look at the size of some of the public cloud players from that perspective. On the other hand, you look at what on-premises gives you. Obviously you control your data. You can control your performance for the most part because you own the resources, or many of them, as opposed to, hey, look, you're waiting. I logged into a rental car site this morning and sat there waiting for a while, and I know for a fact that they have their stuff in the public cloud, by the way, because you can just look at the pointers they have that have the public cloud in there. Fit for purpose, you don't have to necessarily make compromises in terms of exactly what you want, because you're going to buy it and put it in your data center or in a colo, for example. And obviously, your security and IP and privacy concerns are yours to own. You explain them, you own them, you can invest in them as you wish. And a lot of times you do have optimized TCO. So we do hear from a lot of customers that as they migrate to the public cloud, it wasn't necessarily a way to save cost. It was more important on some of the other things we saw on the side in terms of agility and these sorts of things. But for the most part, was not a cost benefit to the company. It was much better. We just want to get out of that business kind of thing is what I hear a lot. We don't want to do that anymore from that perspective. And a lot of times that happens when a company's doing what I mentioned before, has a lot of aged infrastructure and just needs to make a big move. And I will note the last big move we had was really in Y2K, when everybody felt that they had to replace everything. So that drove a lot, and that's been 23 years ago. So that's why you got this accumulated IT debt, if you will, over time. And some customers just say, forget it, just move everything. I talked to a customer recently who had allowed shadow IT to just run rampant all over the company. So they just said, hey, look, we want to move to a different model kind of thing, just start from scratch and stop all this stuff, get everybody lined up. And that's kind of what they were doing there from that perspective. And so as you're looking at these different cloud operating models that are out there, you really want to understand what your users are looking to be able to do. And in some cases, having the right kind of forum to gather that feedback and to make that a very circular kind of feedback loop. So you talk to people, you propose something, you talk to them again, see if that fits for what they need. It's going to be really important to help you make the right decision as you go forward. And the thing to keep in mind is a lot of times I've heard from customers as they migrate to the public cloud, they make some decisions that could create a fair amount of lock-in as they go forward, because they'll be locked into certain tools and certain processes. And when lock-in typically implies expensive, right? I mean, you can't get out. You have to sort of continue to pay to stay in from that standpoint. So you lose some of your leverage when you give up some of the control of your AI resources, as we've been talking about. The other thing to be really important is, you're going to have to plan for multiple terms, so a short term, midterm, and long term as well, and that could make a difference as you go forward. And it's okay to have a short term plan as long as you keep track of where your users want to go. So you might have a short term plan that says, let's just put everything in the public cloud, but a longer term plan makes more sense to have maybe a hybrid model from that standpoint. So again, really important to get in touch with your users, do a needs assessment, where they want to go, and figure out where you want to be on this particular journey as we go forward. I want to just flash up a couple of slides real quickly if I could. HPE has what we call the GreenLake capability. This is really kind of a mix of both on-prem and cloud capability, so you don't really have to make a hard decision one way or the other. You can kind of grow. This allows you to grow with it. We call it the cloud that comes to you sort of thing. It can be, we can own it, you can own it in your data center, or either one from that standpoint. Next slide, please. And so, a little bit more detail on this. So, it gives you sort of a cloud experience, a more of an easy button to get you started, and allows you also to grow and make choices. If you decide, well, we really want to go back on-prem, or we want to go more on cloud, then that will be easier for you. It's also an open ecosystem, so I think that's really important too. So, just a little bit about our GreenLake capability. And at this point, I think I'm done with my preamble. Like to take a look at the polls that we have here. So, it looks like a lot, good third of us are investigating use cases, which is good. Figure out where you want to apply AI and where it could benefit your institute or your company. It seems like only a few of you are running a pilot or testing at this time. So it seems like a lot of people are doing the research. Some are in the solution development, so that's about roughly a third as well, a little less than a third. And some of you have AI in production today, so congratulations, and hopefully that's driving the kind of TCO and business results you had hoped for. And some of you haven't started yet, but are thinking about it. Let's look at the next one here. So, what is your top AI challenge? Talent, I hear that a lot. People just can't get the right people. Budget and technology stack are in there too, from that standpoint. And some people are working on a business case in terms of their particular institute or business as well. And certainly, quality of data can be impactful. And finally, executive sponsorship, although that seems to be a little bit low. I think it's difficult to be an executive in a company and not be talking about AI one way or the other. And someone's going to ask you, and maybe the board of directors, and maybe the CEO, someone's going to ask you, what's your AI strategy? It was just exactly back when you were asked for your big data strategy or your IoT strategy, a few years ago. It's hard to get away with not having those. So, we're pretty mixed in terms of this. So we've got a good crowd here as well. Let's see where people are running their AI workloads. Well, we've got some people are on Amazon, some people are in Google, a bit more are in Azure from that standpoint. So still a heavy amount are on premises, and la-di-da, we've got almost over 50% that are hybrid, which isn't surprising to us. And one of the reasons that we felt like our GreenLake technology was a good mix, or a good fit for people that feel like they need to be hybrid. So that's good as well from that perspective. And how is the cost of the cloud? Here we go. Cost of the cloud negatively impacted you? About 20% said yes, 40% said no, and 40% are probably not sure yet. They're still early in their journey. So that concludes our poll question. So good start. Thanks for everybody's contribution to that. And I'll turn it over.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, folks, now we're moving into the group discussion. let's open the floor, Bill. Let's get some feedback from anybody out there that has heard from you. If you're new to the show, basically, this is where we start with a general question, and then, but you can ask whatever questions you have for Bill. You can use the raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar, and if I call on you, you can say pass, and we'll move right along. And when you come out with your comment, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you do. And of course, keep the chat box active with any questions if you don't want to speak verbally. All right. So Bill's general question to get us started is, where are your current points of friction setting up your AI resources? What have you experienced and how are you addressing them? So Gus, if you'll put that in there, that'd be great. And with that, Dr. Usha, I'm so glad that you're with us today. What was your take on what you heard from Bill?
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bill. It's wonderful to have you here and listen to your perspectives and how you run the your organization. So one thing I felt like a lot that I've taken in respect with the technical debt. So one thing I feel like you did mention about how we should mitigate the technical debt, because that's the challenge across businesses that we see. And for me, it is like when we are doing when I was with McKinsey, it's like regularly evaluating and optimizing the AI infrastructure. That is super important, because that will prevent the accumulation of the technical debt. And one other thing that you highlighted is about the hybrid model. It's like it's not businesses are reluctant, but there are certain things that we try to keep it on prem and some on the cloud, and majority today it's like moved into cloud, and some we still maintain on prem. So that's why you see the poll where the hybrid model, it's like you see that has the higher percentage when compared to what the other adoption people are taking
Right.
across businesses, right? So my question for you is like, what are some best practices or strategies that we can follow when we manage this technical debt? Because every organization have this, right, in order to how they can do this AI resource allocation. Because it with also integrating this LLM today, we are going to face that challenge in each and every businesses, no matter whether it is a startup or larger organizations. Are there any specific tools that you recommend, or your units for optimizing the resource allocation? Can you shed some light over there?
Yeah, certainly. I think I think a lot of it is really looking at the various sets of apps and workloads that you have, and prioritizing, what are the most impactful ones from a business perspective, and then running an ROI on what you hope to gain from that. So I think a lot of it's just I don't want to say just, because there's a lot of work behind this, by the way, but it's calculating out an ROI and showing it to your management and say, hey, look, we can save $1 million by spending $100,000 here and migrating this stuff into either new technology on premises or into the cloud from that perspective. Now, a lot of us, I mean, if you're like me, I'm busy with what I normally do all day. So a lot of us do find, consultants that do this kind of work. There's quite a few of them. It should be really a surprise from that standpoint. But they can come in and help you do some of that work, and work with the various teams across the company to gather the data together to help you make decisions. But I mean, again, the challenge for a lot of companies is that IT grew so fast, and it just became so overwhelming that they've just literally there's just so much that we have in our data centers right now that we wish we did it, and it takes a long time to migrate off of that stuff. I mean, I think all of us have those kinds of stories about how long it took to migrate off of some of our old applications, and all the internal resistance, the people that didn't want to give up this or didn't want to give up that, and those are some of the challenges you have. But best to take the emotion out, and even get a third party in there to be less emotional, and then to be able to stack rank those and figure out what's the best solution for each one of those. And if you look at that cloud lifestyle thing I showed, you can then sort out which applications will fit better either in the cloud or not in the cloud. If there's, if there's a lot of confidential data, that sort of stuff probably needs to stay on-prem. Other stuff that's, less, matters somewhat less, you can put that in the, public cloud.
Thank you very much. So we also have Rebecca Scholl. Rebecca, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself briefly, but the thing I'm interested, you have a question, but I'm interested also in your perspective because you deal with a lot of executives in this technology board that you do. So what's your question, and could you explain that a little?
Of course, yeah. So Rebecca Shaw with Genpact. We're a 100,000 employee organization that spun out of GE about 20 years ago, and we're helping companies with digital transformation. The big consideration I have for this group is, as a lot of the attention has been taken right now on generative AI, there are some new considerations that are coming up. Considerations on talent. What is the talent that is going to be needed in this new generation? Is prompt engineering the job of the future? Considerations on security. I was talking with the Gartner analyst who runs AI, Svetlana Sikular, last week, and she said never before has she had daily calls with legal and security teams in all of her career. So new security considerations, and that has an impact on your decision on where to place these pilots on generative AI. And finally, whether you're going to build your large language model in-house or whether you're going to leverage ones that are already in existence by cloud providers. So I think the question to the group is, are these considerations that you laid out, Bill, are they changing? And are they changing as a result of these security and ethical questions, talent questions, and cost questions on generative AI?
Well, I would just add at the beginning, I mean, that was just kind of a thunderclap for the industry, right? Just a few short months ago, I mean, kind of AI was, we all knew AI needed to happen, ML in particular, but then all of a sudden, the world changed. Suddenly we did search to Google, and then, Google just seems like silly these days. Hopefully there's no one from Google here, but so it's made huge changes, and almost immediately we had the ethical, the legal discussions about and a whole announcement at the all hands about how we can't use that for any kind of business needs. Use it for personal needs, but don't put any business data in it because it suddenly becomes accessible and something that someone else can use. So that's really changed the game quite a bit. I mean, very, very powerful. I also thought it was interesting. I just saw a couple articles recently where ChatGPT generated erroneous data, and there's people who are upset about it from that standpoint. So we have to be very, very careful about that, especially institutionally. And obviously there's a huge advantage. I mean, if you're in any kind of big company, they say, oh my gosh, I can actually type into something and find where the answers I want are without having to troll through a whole bunch of outdated URLs that the company has to spend a lot of time on, sort of thing. So it has some wonderful advantages, but also some challenges as well. I'll leave it to the rest of the group to comment as well.
Great, thanks. Shaheen, David, Anna, any questions for Bill related to this?
Sure, I'll go. Glad to be here and glad to see Bill again. Thank you. Always a pleasure to listen to you. And thank you for driving such a nice community here. I put it in my poll, and I want to ask also two questions. One is use cases. I think ChatGPT is very simple. So you just go and prompt and play, and it generates content. It's a bit of a BS artist, so you have to be careful.
Yep.
But it's like makes it very easy to know how to use it. I think when you go to other use cases, unless you really are a big company, you may be wondering, like, where can I use this? What does it do? So I think it's more of a question, a suggestion is that what are the use cases you see in different departments that are using AI effectively, kind of beyond just automation and scripting and what all the robotic process automation guys have been doing. So that's really one question. The other thing that I put in my poll was data quality. I'm highly worried about data quality because I think, somebody has to put the science into data science and be skeptical and look at the data science. So if you can speak to both of those, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I think one of the important things, and one thing I'm seeing right now is that people are thrilled with the capability of ChatGPT, but everyone needs to have something from a business perspective that actually applies to their business. So I would see over time where if you look at just take any particular industry, let's take the energy industry for example, they're going to want to see some generative AI that's appropriate to their market. Maybe is this the right place to to drill the hole, sort of thing, as simple as that, and be able to come back with an answer that says, well, it looks like 80% probability you'll find natural gas or whatever you want there, and this is the reason why from that perspective. So actually drilling down beyond a lot of the models today are, I did AI, when I was in college, which was forever ago, right? I did a expert system, right, for failure analysis and mechanical things, right? And it would come up with 70% this, 50% that, 20% this. I think being able to use this generative AI, this ChatGPT capability to actually dig below that very simplified level and be able to say, well, it's 80%, and these are the reasons why, to actually give you a business proposition about why that's the case. And I think that's going to be important. So to your point, right now I have it, using we have the simplified thing that, there's a defect here, kick that thing off the production line. That's relatively simple sort of thing. Or, don't run over the dog in the crosswalk kind of thing. Those things are relatively simple in real terms, but actually kind of getting below that, it's going to take a lot to do. In fact, I just was strategizing with the sales team and saying, well, what can we talk to them about? And I said, well, right now it's all very developing for them. And so over time, they'll have that capability, but hopefully we'll be able to take some models and modify those to be more applicable depending upon your market. So I think the answer to your question is it's going to be a while before we see some really good use cases other than, write me a song kind of thing. Which could be valuable for some people, but we're all here in business, and so I don't do songs for business kind of thing, at least right now. Not right now. Sometimes I have to sing a song, but anyway. And so that's some of the important things as we go forward. So I think you'll start to see that. People will see the value, invest in that, and that's when I talk to some of the customers and completely agree with you, Shaheen. It's the customers I'm talking to are like the biggest corporations in the world. So let's be completely fair about that. I believe that that will start to drive downward that capability. It's going to be a while. It's not going to be your 50-person architectural firm is probably not going to be using AI anytime soon to the degree that the generative AI is. You're not going to put my son's girlfriend is actually getting an architecture degree at U of T, and so Juliet, that's her name, won't be able to kind of talk into a device and say, hey, look, design me this, and this thing pops out and everything's all done. For a small architecture firm, it's going to be a while. Go ahead.
Couple things. One question came up. So leveraging a true multi-cloud model is a strong desire by the industry, but how do you actually go about doing that? How do you actually help? How are you helping business leaders do that?
So I think I'll just talk about it in general terms as opposed to anything specific to HPE. But in general, there's a fair amount of work going on. Generally the large public cloud players see a value in holding their proprietary interfaces and these sorts of things, as long as they can, right? They're getting a fair amount of profit from that. There has been some work, and I think there'll continue to be some work in how do we standardize some of those interfaces so you can switch from one to the other more easily. Now, for the most part, we kind of play the middle player. So in other words, we try to work with a particular customer and get them access to to different cloud resources. In some cases, customers are coming to us through, like I mentioned, GreenLake a little bit, and then also taking advantage of they might also have some subscription dollars from AWS or from Azure or whatever that they can then use. In some cases, very, very common for larger customers to have to be sampling from all the big cloud providers. So they're doing some work over here. They got a good deal on some AI instances over here, and so we can help to tie that together into one interface and basically manage it for them. So I think that's what you're seeing. Us more in this at the center of this thing more than anything else. And I do agree. I think people want that multi-cloud experience. They want to get, here's a set of interesting capabilities, AI resources over here. I want to get to them and I've chosen over here, but I want to get to here. So I think you'll see more and more demand for that going forward.
Right. Thank you, Bill. So last question, David Mullins, would you mind just mentioning it? I mean, clearly this is a big issue.
Oh, sure, John. Hi, I'm David Mullins, and I'm the general manager of WFSU Public Media. We're the PBS and NPR stations in Tallahassee, Florida. And we're just really investigating the prospect of what could AI and generative AI do to help us in this industry, Bill. And I think really kind of speaking on behalf of this industry, but maybe even all charitable organizations, using AI in your to more fully develop a CRM that really is diving deeper into donor information and what are the ethical considerations that we need to be aware of with that, and will there be an opportunity within the development of AI to create an ethical standard that is already kind of automated within AI. And then on the media side of content creation, definitely not necessarily for a small organization like myself, but a 24/7 news operation that is trying to generate new news constantly. The use of AI or generative AI could be a great benefit, but also could be a disaster for them, right?
Yeah.
So
No.
any considerations that HPE has had in that world?
Yeah, no, I mean, all I can say is I agree with what you're saying. So there's cost and advantage, and it's just like we have with social media today. I mean, you get stuff in your inbox, and how truthful is that stuff really? I mean, it has bred sort of a general skepticism, and you believe the stuff you like, and you don't believe the stuff you don't like, and it's kind of gotten to that sort of thing. But I believe that in general, and this is starting at some pretty interesting levels, is providing or building ethical standards around AI is something we probably need to do. I think actually the United States is a little bit behind the rest of the world. Europe already has some pretty significant ethical standards that they put up. I just thought about this. I'll add that to the URL if I could get to it. But you look through some of that stuff, and that's very interesting as well. And so we're behind. We need to catch up. And I think it builds in a whole. I mean, it's a whole line of different thought than we've had in the past, because it's the old, when you wrote your term paper in high school or college or whatever, how much of that is like original work versus, you kind of regurgitated what someone else said. How much original thinking did you put into that versus, just move words around. And I think that's going to be a real challenge going forward. And I have two college, well, actually one just graduated, thank goodness, but I've got one college age person left. And that's, I mean, it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting impact going forward. Now, the reality of it is from, again, I've had a couple here. There's so much already out there. If you know how to get to it, you can get to it anyway. So in other words, if you want to get answers to your chemistry 101 test, it's out there in the media somewhere. So we need to build, we need to update our thinking about that and see what we can do there. And the reverse of that, by the way, because there have been cases where People have put, so some of the schools have these devices that go through and say, oh, well, you cheated, you got your data from here. And, there's in some cases very little recourse from that standpoint. And you want to understand, well, why did you see that? How do you actually do that sort of thing? And so that's another challenge as well. So both sort of in and out from that perspective. So I think that's going to be interesting going forward. Absolutely.
So we're going to extend just a few minutes longer than the 12:45. And we've got several other questions in chat that you can follow up with, Bill, after the show.
Sure.
But I wanted to, what kind of other input from David, perhaps Rebecca, Usha, people I know that are involved in the ethical dilemma issue here? Any thoughts more based on what you've heard?
Well, John, I was at a National Association of Broadcasters convention last month, and there was actually a session devoted to AI, and some media organizations are already applying generative AI into their operations, but they are the final word in that session was, as long as there is oversight and kind of an editorial oversight at the end of this process to make sure that nothing incorrect, well, I guess you can never promise nothing incorrect is going to hit the media, right? But at least within the ethical standards that that organization has for the content, they're going to make sure that it meets those standards. So people interaction for the foreseeable future is going to always need to be there.
Thanks.
I'll just, go ahead, Usha.
No, go ahead, please, Rebecca, go ahead, and then I will go.
I'll just say that it clearly needs to be designed up front when you're building AI projects. It's not something that you can think of as an afterthought. And we're seeing companies who are actually building a chief ethics office, similarly to a risk office that they would have for audit purposes, and they are, it is going to be a mandatory requirement. So it's not a, maybe, it's a absolute need. Designing it from the start allows you to look at the considerations of, the data bias, the model bias. The challenge with a generative AI is the speed with which it is taking on. And so that speed will tend to replicate biases that we already know exist in healthcare, around education, or in finance world around income. And so that is perhaps an additional challenge with right now is the speed with which it's being adopted.
Yeah, great point, Rebecca, that you made on the, it cannot be an afterthought. Many organizations, they were, before these LLMs spurred up, they were doing it was only as a post deployment. Oh, okay, we need to add an explainability. Why this model made certain decision, why the claim was disapproved, why the claim was approved, so they never thought it has to happen right from the phase, when we start with the data cleansing and data pre-processing. So, and also one other thing that I'm noticing, there was one paper that just came yesterday, I believe, this week, from LinkedIn, where they are trying to put together, many businesses are doing this, where they're putting together a justifiable framework, how exactly they are mitigating the bias on why certain decisions or why model is making this decision. So they give that justifiable framework so that there is a transparency. And that is super important, because you have to base all the ethical framework where the fairness, accountability, there are so many things, security, compliance, regulatory laws that we follow, but the fairness, explainability, the accountability and transparency, these four are super important in order to have that ethical considerations follow through across the ML development lifecycle.
Thanks, Usha. So thank you both. And one question on the way out, Bill, for your last word. Anna had to pop out, but she said, well, how will the AI help the new generations that are taking place in the shop floor that need to capture this tribal knowledge and experience? SMEs, the SMEs that are retiring, how can they capture that?
Well, I think so I think the important thing is to really figure out what what the people on the shop floor are doing. It's kind of data gathering, data accuracy perspective, and then being able to use that. And in some cases, maybe we don't need them on the shop floor anymore because a robot or something else takes over from that perspective, or we use that as a way to train them in order to get them up to speed faster, or even basically by themselves, because the SME isn't here anymore. And how many, I mean, I think a great example, we all have this, what about that code that was written 10 years ago and the person that wrote it is retired now, and how do we understand it? I think that's a great example. And we've all been there. We all dug through the code and said, okay, well, this happens here, that happens there. We do some flow charting kind of thing. That would be a great application of AI to be able to go in there and kind of break that code out, and even suggest ways to port it or to modify it or make it easier from that perspective. I mean, I think that applies also to, someone had a question about processes as well. I think it's the same with processes. A lot of processes are not well documented, and they sort of develop over time. Maybe they started here and then they were slowly changed, but there was no documentation. I think this is another place where AI can track those changes, and be able to document them and help enforce them going forward. So some really interesting things possible going forward.
Agreed. Bill, that's going to have to be the last word. Thanks, everybody. So how was the expert talk and discussion today? You can see that we put up the survey. Please fill it out. It's very important for us to continue to get better, make the show better for each of you. Today's post-show notes will hit your mailbox soon with the attendee contacts and other information that you need. Next up on From the Experts, Solving Problems with AI continues July 11th with focused on your AI journey blueprint for business leaders, led by Joey Zwicker, co-founder Pachyderm and now VP of AI Portfolio Strategy at HPE. With over 2,300 members, 20,000 followers across 25 industries, the FTE network is growing fast thanks to you and our sponsors like HPE. Please check out our library of expert content available to members on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Register for more shows just like this one on our website, fte.network. Folks, we're out of time. Thanks once again, Bill. Really appreciate it. And to all of you from the experts on the FTE show, we'll see you next time.